Hi everyone, this is Dr. Raquel Butler from Integrated Veterinary Therapeutics.
And Sophie Vandenberg from Equine Postulate. And we welcome you to the Equine Functional Posture Podcast, your ultimate source for insights into the influence of functional posture on biomechanics, health, and overall well-being of horses.
Whether you're a seasoned equestrian, an equine professional, or simply a horse enthusiast, this podcast is designed to help you understand the critical aspects of functional posture.
Tune in each week as we discuss practical tips, delve into expert interviews, and explore the latest research in the impact of functional posture on equine anatomy, physiology, movement, and more.
Let's create a world where we empower our horses to be in a mental, emotional, and physical balance. Welcome to today's podcast. It's a very exciting one with our second guest, who I'll introduce in a minute. How are you going today, Soph?
Raquel, going really well. Keen for this conversation. It's super important and really linked to all the other topics that we've gone across, and it's so nice to have so many like-minded people to talk to about it.
Yeah, so we're welcoming Mel Fleming today. Mel's someone I've known for quite a while, I think over 10 years or so, but played an instrumental part in my horse journey. Helped me out when I realised that I had no ground skills when I first took my thoroughbred Henry to her, and he was a little bit out of control at times. And so she's been a big foundation in my learning about posture, but also about training. And frequently attending her clinics now that I have horses in work and starting my young horse, and really aligns with like the way that we're thinking about posture, and has, well, been a mentor of mine to really kind of shape a lot of the ways that I think about posture as well. So Mel, if you would like to introduce yourself, that would be fabulous.
All right. Hello, I'm Mel Fleming. I teach horsemanship, and the program I teach is called Connecting with Horses and Riding with Synchronicity. And essentially that's about, how do we connect to the horses at the deepest level of their mind, their body, and their spirit, and really taking into account the emotional aspects of horses and horsemanship. And then a big part of it is posture and biomechanics, because if we want to ride horses, it's just such an important thing that we really help their bodies to get into the right shape to be able to do that.
So I know that you have a pretty in-depth history of kind of how you got to this place where, you really focus on the physical, emotional, mental, like the whole approach to training of horses. But I'd love for you to fill us in a bit on your journey, like of getting here. Like, what were your foundations? And
well, it's a bit of a long story, but anyway, I'll try and keep it brief. I started off as a kid just riding horses on a property, mustering cattle and sheep and doing all sorts of stock work. Then when I left school, my first job was with the horses on an Andalusian stud. And when I went there, I was working with a lot of young horses and riding their stallion. And I got into a lot of English riding there and started doing a lot of competition, especially in dressage, but also jumping and eventing. And I did my EA, used to be called EFA back then, like instructor training. So became a coach for dressage, show jumping, and eventing. Also at that time did some vaulting, which is like gymnastics on horses or trick riding. But that was actually quite instrumental too in learning about biomechanics and our body and feel and timing and balance. So that actually did play a big role down the track in sort of where my horsemanship evolved. I got super focused in dressage, worked for several Grand Prix dressage trainers in Australia, and I had a Grand Prix school horse that I could ride and ride all the Grand Prix movements. And yeah, I was just, thought my whole future was like just going to be full on dressage. But in lots of those positions, I was working with young horses, foals, weanlings, starting, or, not always starting their young horses, but riding young horses after they were first started, handling stallions. And anyway, we had a lot of just, behavioral problems or things, with horses didn't want to load on the truck or the float, or wouldn't stand still to get shod, or some other, they might buck or rear, or stallions were difficult to handle. I didn't feel very comfortable or like how a lot of the way we were shown how to wean foals and handle the foals. It just felt pretty unstructured, and they were pretty scared. And so anyways, I had lots of questions in all of those areas, and that got me interested in natural horsemanship, and then that specifically was with Pirelli, and that seemed to have a lot of answers. So I spent a lot of time with Pat and Linda Pirelli, and became one of their highest level instructors and horse trainers, and spent a lot of time in America, and they would send me around the world, doing clinics and working with problem horses. And problem horses was something I was always interested in. Because after you had this question, who would I have to be? It's an interesting question that I had. Who would I have to be to work with those horses? It wasn't even back then, what did I need to do? But who would I have to be good enough to work with those horses? Anyway, we was always get a lot of problem horses. Pat Pirelli had a reputation for working with difficult horses, so we had plenty of those that turned up at the ranch and clinics to work with. But the difficult horses actually were part of my learning about the deeper level of emotions and connecting with horses, and even their bodies, because I started realizing that stuff going on in their bodies, as well as us not having enough mentally, emotional, and even spiritual level of connection, was one of the big reasons why these horses were difficult, and that we had problems with them. So anyway, from there, my journey really evolved more and more, and I started moving away from, what I'd been taught with Pirelli, or they evolved into much more things. So what I do currently is not really very similar to Pirelli. It's very different. But one of the big things that evolved into was meeting some ladies from England who made saddles called the balance saddles. And they were some of my biggest mentors in the biomechanics and the posture for horses. They were able to explain things about horses and movement that no one else had explained to me before. They then introduced me to one of their colleagues and mentors, an equine osteopath in the UK called Gavin Schofield, who's one of the leading equine osteopaths in Europe. And so I went to some seminars with him, and learnt more about, his ideas of posture and how horses really needed to move to be sound and healthy to be ridden. So anyway, things just evolved more and more from there, and in all aspects of, the emotional side of working with horses, the spiritual aspects of it, and the physical part of working with their bodies.
So in terms of, because obviously our podcast is about posture, which you've touched on the importance and how you kind of got there. But how have you seen, in terms of the horses that you've worked with, like when they've had, well, I guess it's like that emotional and physical connection of the posture, and kind of changes that you've seen with that connection in their bodies, like, with that. Because I know, we can say, well, what did you see with the changes in the posture? But I know for you it's connected, there's a whole lot to that. Yeah. So, just talking us through maybe some of the big changes that you've seen where horses found a more balanced, functional posture, and kind of how that transpired, and what the journey was with those horses.
Yeah. So I think there's a very, very strong link between horses' mental and emotional states and their postures. And I think it works both ways. One is that I think their mental and emotional state, when it's not in a great place, as in they're full of anxiety or anger or resentment, which are emotions that a lot of times people don't even really recognize that horses have. You know, when people talk about emotions in horses, they're usually talking about they're either confident or not confident, or scared, or, you know, or not scared. Most people don't really think about that horses could be depressed or angry or resentful. But there's a lot of horses, you know, that are carrying a lot of those emotions. But anyway, a big part of those emotions is just stress and anxiety. And I think those emotions are one of the biggest things that starts putting horses into poor posture. So I'm not saying it's the only thing. I mean, horses could have accidents and injuries and, you know, their diet, their nutrition, if they've got ulcers, you know, there's a lot of other things. And of course, bad saddle fit and, you know, riding poorly with, you know, not good riding dynamics and jamming their heads in, you know, really unnatural or incorrect headsets and all of that. But I think the emotional part is a really big part, and it's because many horses just feel very misunderstood. Because I think basically people don't understand horses at the deepest level of their mind and their emotions and their spirit. And even the fact that a lot of times people don't really see horses for who they are as an individual being, as a, you know, they get used for a tool to do a job. You know, I've even heard people say, explain exactly for this horse, it is a tool to get a job done. So even the fact that we don't really appreciate horses for who they are or respect them at that deepest level of an individual spiritual being, that in itself causes horses to have a lot of distress and feel very isolated, misunderstood, unappreciated. And just like in people, when as soon as people are not feeling confident or happy, or, you know, they're depressed or whatever, their posture follows those mental and emotional states. So I think horses that are living in a lot of, like I said, fear or anxiety or angst, that straight away causes them to, you know, to basically get on their forehand and tighten up in their necks, and all their energy shifts forward into their chest and their necks and their throats, just like in people, you know, it comes up into our chest and clenching our jaw and not breathing. All the same things happen in horses. So just helping horses to really relax and really feel safe and really feel that we understand them and we care about how they feel. You know, for me, the biggest thing that we can do to create connection with horses is we have to care more about how they feel about doing what we're doing than we do about just getting a task or something done. And horses know, as soon as we have that much care and consideration for them, they know that, which means they also know when we don't. So that in itself is a big relief for horses, and we'll start seeing postural changes just through that. You know, then the other aspect is, you know, then how does helping them be in a better posture help their mind and their emotions? Because you can liken it to a person, you know, let's say a person was in a depressed state, while ever they just keep sitting around and they're not moving their body and their chest is really closed and they're not breathing, they're going to stay in that state. But if that person started walking around really briskly and opening their chest and moving their arms and just getting more activated in their body, it's very difficult to stay in that same state of depression. So with horses, it also works like that. And it's usually not going to be about let's get horses moving more actively, because that's what people are mainly doing, like just running horses around, you know, when they're emotional. That actually makes things worse, because the horse, yes, the horse is moving, but they're moving with a lot of tension in their body, and they're not breathing fully and using their diaphragm. They're just running around with just tension, you know, jaws clenched, not breathing properly, tight backs, the nervous system's just tight. So when we can get the horse to just release and let go through really soft, slow movement, when we can get horses to relax in their necks where they often hold a lot of tension, just get them to start breathing. So when we start influencing their physical body in those ways, and like how I use a lot of the groundwork sort of exercises is as a diagnostic tool for not only like what physically might be going on in the body, but where emotionally, where are the emotions hidden and trapped in the body? Because what part of the body's tight? What part of the body can't move? What part of the body doesn't move with that? I have this little saying, soft and smooth rhythm and flow. So when we can start unlocking the body and just releasing all those tight holding tension patterns in the body, so we're working with the physical body to help shift that mental and emotional state, because once you get the body to release, it's like the cells in the body can't keep holding on to those emotions.
Absolutely. And, if you're talking about releasing brace and tension and using slow, intentional movement, can you give us an example of like a foundational postural exercise or something like that you would give somebody at the beginning to start to create what you're talking about, connection and synchronicity?
Yeah. The first exercise I get everyone to do in clinics with their horse, well, actually, it's the second one, really. The first one is to sit outside their horse's pen and do like a little connecting meditation with their horse and just try and tune into their horse and sense their horse, how's the horse feeling? And that in itself has a big effect, because horses are just mostly can't believe that people take the time to do something like that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what people can pick up from that. But the second thing is then is walking in connection with your horse, where you're walking side by side with your horse, and it's really about how we walk, like how are we in ourselves? Because if we're tight and clenching our jaw and not breathing fully and locked up in our lower back and our sacrum, and which is what most people commonly do, and interesting, it's what most horses commonly do, we can't lead a horse into relaxation if we're holding all those tension patterns in ourselves. So, teach people breathing exercise, how they do what's called centered expansive breathing, and then get people just to try and walk with their horse, walking side by side, so they're not in front. Just like we want to walk like your two best friends in an interactive conversation, not just the person out in front and the horse is just lagging along behind, or the horse is towing the person along. And then in that process, it's like if the horse walks really slow, then we match the horse. The horse can stop whenever it chooses to. If the horse starts rushing, we're going to ask that horse to stop, because whatever we allow, we reinforce. And whatever we synchronize or harmonize with, we reinforce. Whatever you reinforce, you get more of. So if the horse starts rushing, and for me, rushing's really about is how much tension is there. So if I feel like the horse is not breathing and their jaw's clenched and the muscles all along their spine are clenched and tight, then I'm just going to interrupt that pattern in the most, gentle, least invasive way that we can, and that's just ask the horse to stop. So we just stop and ground and breathe and wait till the horse is relaxed, and then we can start walking again, and just getting people to really slow down in themselves, and then horses will start to slow down, and trying to sense their horse in that walking. It's like, how is that horse moving? Listening and using all your senses, listening to the footfalls, noticing tension in their neck, noticing softness in their eye. So yeah, it's just really simple exercise, but it takes a lot of awareness, teaches people to be aware. And that's my very first exercise.
Yeah, and I have obviously done that exercise a fair few times, but every time that I come to a clinic and do it again, I go to a different level of understanding and connection with my horse. And obviously at the last clinic I was there with Ellie, and so like the first exercise that you talked about of the meditation, we had a pretty awesome experience where she laid down and felt pretty relaxed in that moment for her very first ever clinic away from home.
Yeah.
So that was like pretty cool. But then the connection, like the walking with connection, when I got to the clinic, she was quite distracted and, decisive in what she wanted to look at and where she thought that she needed to go. And I'd been having kind of a battle with that over time, like her opinions and strength of character deciding what she should do and me knowing what to do with that. And so then, you're like connected, walking, breathe and expand into your pelvis and what is it, blend, it's not blank, but blend, meld and what is it?
Do you mean when she went too fast, how you would get her to
Well,
stop?
yeah, and even just to like the connection initially. So with the lead rope and not being abrupt.
Yeah. So how to have more feel. Yep. So blending and just not being grabby with our hands. And it's like, how do we just put that feel on really slowly? Basically, it comes down to, how good could we make even our corrections feel? Like, how can we make that horse not feel wrong? How can we make that horse not feel criticized? Even when we need to be very particular, and I'm very particular with horses in their bodies and how they're moving. But how do you say it? Or how do you say it with love? How do you say it in a way where the horse doesn't take offense to it? Yes, how tactful could we be?
Yeah, and then my ability to like blend with that and do exactly that. So like initially, she was pulling me and then I was kind of meeting her with a pulling back. So she'd look over there and then I'd say, no, look over here. But then just kind of matching her and then blending with her, but then also grounding myself. And then all of a sudden she had no resistance. Like there was nothing to resist against. And she was just like, oh, okay, that's a great idea. I'll come with you because that feels pretty nice.
Yeah.
Instead of her just going, no, I want to do this and I'm not doing that because I'm concerned about this and you're not really my safe place yet. So, you're not really that valuable to me right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's changed, every time I come to clinic, it increases my feel and perception again, but it's quite amazing when you just connect in with your body, breathe, and think about how you can kind of have feel and be less invasive and be really loving with that lead rope. How all of a sudden the horse is like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to come with you now, and it's just effortless as opposed to you pulling and bracing and then pulling you towards the grass and pulling you this way because they want to look at that. And I've treated many horses that are like that. And so it's such an easy change in terms of it's so much less fight. Like it's a really nice place to feel and you feel like really solid and quite in control of yourself and able to support the horse and it's and they're like, oh, that's a good place to follow.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it feels so much better for us, when feels like we're in an argument or a fight with them and it's no fun for either one. Yeah.
Yeah, like I was, I've seen people really being pulled off balance by the horses like so easily.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're able to kind of ground and breathe in to your center, which is such a valuable exercise for life, then they can't pull you off balance. Like you're very solid, but you're also not in a braced position, which is, I think like it leads into the discussion about how we influence our horse's posture, because you've definitely opened my eyes up a lot to that. Like, so I'd love for you to talk a bit more about that, like how we influence the posture, how our intentions, our energy,
all
of that stuff.
Yeah, well, how that first started for me was actually, I can't take credit for discovering that initially. Actually, that came from Gavin Schofield, the equine osteopath I mentioned before, one of my mentors, where he was working on some horses that I had, and I said, oh, they're too, I don't feel like they're sound enough to ride, so I'm just working at liberty with them. And he said, well, while you're doing that, just do in your body what you want them to do. And I remember thinking, oh yeah, right, as if that's going to do anything. But however, the next session I went out, I thought I might as well have an experiment with that. And I knew, what I want the horse to do, things like, lift their withers and lengthen their neck in a certain way and lengthen their sacrum and, lift and extend in different parts of their body. So I just started, I was just walking. I didn't have to be trotting or cantering, but I was just doing that feeling in my body while I was walking. And I couldn't believe it. These horses just started doing it. I'm like, oh my God, this actually works. And so then I just started experimenting with that with every horse I played with, and I couldn't believe how it worked. Then I also started to realize that when we're unaware of what we're doing in our body, horses were also mirroring things like that, as in when people weren't breathing and they were clenching their jaw. And I might be teaching and I see a horse like really holding its jaw really tight and not breathing. And I'd say to the person who owned the horse, they might be riding it or walking next to it, it's like, oh, just move your jaw around, move your tongue around your mouth and start to breathe. And then I see the horse just drop its head down and lick its lips. So I started to really see how the horses would mirror the person. And when people hold a lot of tension in their spines, and especially through their sacrums, through their buttocks, you see horses just mirror that basically. So yeah, that just became a really important part of the process for me in influencing their posture. So horses just pick up on it. A lot of people would say it's to do with mirror neurons. Yep, I'm sure that's a thing. I'm not a science person, but I'm sure that's a thing. But I think there's also just an energetic, energetic thing. I'm sure they're also, seeing us. So I guess that's the mirror neuron thing. But I'm sure there's lots of levels that happens at. I can't really explain why it happens, but it just happens.
Raquel, I was just going to say, just that Raquel on a number of times has mentioned the fact that like the intention behind, when you guys are in clinics and you're doing stuff, and that trying to be loving has such a great impact on the horse, like having love in the way that you pick up the rope, in the way that you lead them, and the way that you walk with them, and that it feels nice. And on the connection level, horses deeply and intrinsically value connection and synchronicity. It's such a motivator even for them intrinsically to be in harmony. And you see it even in horses together, when they walk in synchronicity together, with their paddock mates, or they move together, kind of like they're dancing, and it feels really beautiful and wonderful to watch. And you can create that yourself. It's no wonder that they want to align with you, and it happens both, not so great sometimes, and when you can be intentional about it, can produce really beautiful results. And I was just thinking what you said about the fact that you are still very particular about what you're asking for and how you want them to move. It's not about limiting what you do with horses. So saying like these kind of movements or this kind of discipline has become off limits because, you can't do it nicely for the horse. It's about trying to find how you can bring a nice feeling into whatever it is that you do want to do. If you're looking to achieve things, it's applicable in so many spaces, whether or not you're in a competitive space or a non-competitive space. It doesn't have to mean that things are off limits if you're trying to do the right thing by your horse and create nice feelings in them and ask them to move in certain ways.
Yeah, totally. I think most horse sports, not all, but I think the majority of horse sports could be done in a way that's biomechanically good for horses, is good for their bodies. I think, especially with domestic horses these days, you know, they have a pretty boring life. You know, when horses are in the wild, you know, they're pretty stimulated mentally, emotionally, and physically just through trying to survive, number one. You know, stay away from predators, find food, find water. They're traveling a lot to get to food and water. They're, you know, they've got all of the, I'd just say the, you know, mental, emotional, the whole stimulation to do with, you know, breeding and raising foals and the whole herd dynamics.
Very
But when
social,
horses,
deep bonds. Yeah.
yeah, and when horses are domesticated, you know, even when they're living in relatively large paddocks, even in herd situations, there's still not a lot of stimulation for horses. So I think it's very important that we can provide stimulation for them, and through riding, through doing things together. And, you know, I would even say at a spiritual level of things that, you know, horses, part of their role at that spiritual level thing is to help people evolve or learn through the process of doing things with horses. Because I know that certainly happened for me, and I think many people that, you know, that I meet in clinics or things like that, it's the same thing. Like the horses, especially when we're trying to do it in this way that's a really positive way for the horse, it just opens the door for personal development and involvement for people. So I think it just comes down to how we do it when we're working with horses and whatever sports or things we want to do. And do we truly just keep putting how the horse feels about it in their mind, body, and spirit ahead of achieving an outcome? I actually think it's good to have goals. I think it's good, you know, if people want to compete and do things, as long as they're really putting how the horse feels ahead of just wanting to win that ribbon or complete the test or whatever. So yeah, I think it can all be good.
It's a really kind of big social shift that's even happened the last couple of years, up to 5 years, you know, like in a lot of spaces. Raquel was saying not long ago in conversation, like, you know, even some big horse shows that have shifted the tone of, you know, the educators and the presenters and the topics and the way people are talking about the experience that the horse has in those spaces. Just, yeah, it's different. It's a spiritual and social cultural shift in the industry, and it's feels really good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, people are trying to do better.
Yeah, totally.
So if you were to describe, it's probably a bit of an ambiguous question, but if you were just to describe a horse that demonstrated to you, obviously this changes depending on what they're doing at the time, but like a horse is demonstrating healthy functional posture, whether it's in motion or statically, like however you want to describe it, but like how would you describe when you see a horse that's kind of in its optimal functional posture? Like what do you see in that horse?
That's a very hard question.
Well,
it's not hard if I was seeing it in a horse, but just to describe. But things I'd look for.
Because we're trying to help people, you know, to kind of develop their eye and develop their awareness and observation skills. So, you know, sometimes people's perception of good posture may be quite different to what our perception of good posture is or somebody else's. So I think to try to give people a bit more just a bit more depth and understanding of, well, what are we actually looking for when we describe a good functional posture, and what do you see in those horses when they make that shift to that place?
You know, without using diagrams and stuff, I think one of the things is like the qualities of soft and smooth rhythm and flow is going to be a pretty good thing just to look for. Softness meaning softness in every aspect. You could have softness in their mind, in their eyes, how the muscles look and feel to touch, the sound the feet make when they land, how the feet look when they land, and, you know, do they look like they land flat and hard and heavy? And the joints, the range of motion joints go through, do they look like they're really jerky, and the joints like knees and fetlocks and staying in flexion a lot and not really fully lengthening and opening into soft extension? You know, when we have the qualities of soft and smooth, rhythm and flow, that's going to tell us that we have a certain degree of relaxation, which to me, relaxation is the #1 ingredient for optimal biomechanics. I think soon as we don't have relaxation, so the body is got excess tension patterns that it doesn't need, then there's no way in the world we could say we've got optimal biomechanics. You know, the other things that I've, you know, done a lot of learning in to help me understand all of this is Feldenkrais and martial arts, Aikido. And 2 of the key principles in those are relaxation and getting people to understand, especially in the Aikido, you know, that most people think relaxation is just like, oh, we're just slouched on the couch. But relaxation can mean that your body is completely relaxed, but it's alive and full of energy. So if we think about the tennis player, you know, a really top level tennis player at the end of the court waiting to receive the ball, you know, they're like, body is moving, it's alive with energy. If they were stuck with tension, they'd be way too slow to respond. So looking for relaxation, so that's in that softness of all the muscles, like there should still be a softness. As soon as there's a brace or a tension, we're not going to have optimal biomechanics. So the soft and smooth rhythm and flow, like as soon as we lose rhythm, as soon as we lose the flow, that can be feedback that we've either lost relaxation or we've lost balance. The horse has lost balance. So that would be some key words that I would think about. The next main thing I would say is that it's got nothing to do with the headset as such. It's like the head and neck is, you know, the counterbalancing system for what's happening in the rest of the body in terms of its balance and function of movement. There are ways that we can influence the head and neck to influence the spine that goes all the way through the body. But what usually we see happens is people are just influencing like pole flexion and vertical flexion at the pole, which does not extend the whole way through the spine. So, you know, you see horses like inner frame or the soft feel or vertical flexion or on the beard or whatever other name people want to give it. But the horse is still really dropped down through their sternum, their back behind the wither under the saddle areas drop down, the pelvis is disengaged, and they're not really pushing with their hind legs. So, you know, I want to really see that the sternum's lifted up and back, their withers are up and back. They're lifting and expanding under the saddle area. Pelvis is flexing under, and then you know, I'm looking for where is the hind leg positioned under the body in its like supporting and the start of its pushing stage of the stride, to indicate, you know, how much weight are the hind legs actually carrying. Yeah, because if the hind leg's too far out the back when it's doing its weight bearing stage of the stride, well, it's not actually supporting any weight of the front end or the rider. Yeah, so just looking at all of those things and how much swing, you know, through the spine, like through the spine, like every vertebrae of the spine has to go through movements of rotation, bit of lateral bending, flexion and extension. And every vertebrae all through that spine has to have its little part to play in that movement. So when, you know, there's tiny, tiny little movements, but it all needs to happen. So I'm really looking for how much of that swing, how much is movements flowing through the spine and which part of the spine's stuck or blocked. Yeah, and, you know, softness in the underneath neck muscle. Is the horse like bracing through their underneath neck muscle and using it to sort of pull itself along with its front legs? Yeah, that's a few things I would be looking at.
Yeah, I think that description, soft and smooth rhythm and flow, I think that sums it up really nicely, because it does create a bit of a visual, and something to ask ourselves in every moment, with our horses, like, is it soft and smooth, and is there rhythm and flow?
Yeah.
Because, it's a challenging place to get to for some. Well, for a lot of people, I could still probably count the number of times that I've really felt it, especially from a ridden perspective, where it just actually feels quite easy and effortless. Like, you're not pushing, you're not pulling, you're just really allowing the horse to take you very easily in those moments. And I'm lucky I've experienced it for little like,
Yeah.
but I'm sure a lot of people haven't experienced it.
Totally.
And they do think they have to push and pull and actually be physically riding. And I remember having a lesson with you once, and I hadn't ridden for ages, like maybe a year or something. It was a long time. And I had a lesson, I think it was when I first had Jelly, but he wasn't mine just yet. And we rode. And so usually after riding, when I hadn't ridden for however long, I'd be sore, because even if it was just walking, like, I'd still be, you'd still get a bit of rider soreness, like, from being in the saddle. And I remember I wasn't sore at all.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
we rode for, I don't know, like, it wasn't 10 minutes. Like, it was a lesson. You gave me a lesson.
Yeah.
Some trotting.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sore, because the whole focus of the lesson was on me not having brace,
Yeah.
and trying to help him learn to find a new place of
Yeah.
not having brace. And like, that kind of really stuck in my mind, that okay, it shouldn't be hard, and we shouldn't really be that sore, because we shouldn't need to do all that work if our horse is actually able to carry themselves. Like,
Yeah.
it's a very different place
Yeah.
to
Absolutely.
be.
Yeah,
And
that's I was going to say, that's the barometer, the soft and smooth rhythm and flow. We can use that as our gauge or our barometer. And that's what, as I was learning all this, that's what I would use. As soon as I felt I lost that in my horse, I'd be asking myself, what do I need to do different? What do I need to change? What might I have done to even cause that? But then, the other thing is, as our barometer or our feedback, when does it feel effortless and easy in riding? And that's how we know we're on track, because whenever it's just feeling like really, really hard work, we've got to know there's something wrong, because it shouldn't be like that. Which doesn't mean riding is still not a workout as such. Like, yes, we do have to have core strength and, a certain degree of fitness to do it. And that's a big aspect of ourselves too, to be even fair to the horse, that we develop our own fitness and balance and mobility, core strength, whatever, but that's different than it just feeling like we're just really got to have strong arms and strong legs and bracing through our body. It's a different feeling. When everything's right, it's going to feel pretty effortless, and when it feels like that for us, it's going to feel like that for the horse. It's going to feel really good to the horse.
Yeah, and what I've noticed in those moments is the horse is really happy to keep going.
Yep.
Like, they're not asking to stop, and like, there is no push. They're just, like, I've had it a few times on Jelly where he just kind of almost picks me up, and he just, like, carries me along, and
Yeah.
and he's happy to keep moving. Like, I don't have to really redirect him or do a whole stack in that moment. Like, they're very happy to just flow forward. There's no difficulty in the forward motion.
Yeah, one of the things I would want to add on to that is that horses that are hard to get going, like ones that they're not just running on adrenaline, basically.
Yeah.
They're kind of the easy ones for most people to ride. You're just steering around the adrenaline. But the horses that don't have that, they're usually the hardest horses for a lot of people to ride. Even a lot of professional trainers would say things like, oh, that's just an old plug, that's a kid's horse, he'll never be any good, just a trial riding horse or whatever. But since I've really developed this way of riding and working with horses, where we learn how to use energy and how to mentally engage the horses and motivate them mentally and emotionally as well as all the optimal, good biomechanics. It's amazing how those uninspired, lazy horses, I don't normally like to use that word, but I'm just using it because that's what most people label them, they're lazy. We've got to think about, I would say they're uninspired. So why are they not inspired, and what do we need to change, whether that's diet, nutrition, hoof care, saddle, whatever, or our riding techniques. There could be a lot of different things we have to look at, but it's amazing how you can get those horses that just have no desire to go forward, and even in arenas where they just get motivated, they get inspired, and it's not through using spurs, it's not through like lots of pressure with a stick, it's not because there's lots of consequences if they don't go. You can inspire them to want to go, and when they're really using their body well, this is something I really experienced in the Aikido. When you really got a bit more advanced in Aikido and you've really got this energy just flowing and moving through your body, it was amazing how your body felt.
Yeah.
And then how you would feel the next day when you woke up, because it was actually very healing and therapeutic for your body to get energy flowing through your body. And so when there's no excess tension or contraction in joints and muscles, the energy flows, and it's flowing through meridians and chakras and blood in all aspects of our body. It's very healing and therapeutic. And I believe that's what's possible and what happens for horses too, when we ride them in this way where it's really optimal for them, and it's a good feeling, it's healthy, it's healing, and it's therapeutic. It's what's possible, and horses get inspired to want to participate, and it's the coolest feeling, because to me there's nothing feels worse than riding a horse that doesn't want to be ridden. One that you've just got to push when I had a lot of success early on in my career doing stuff with horses, but I got to a point where I started to know that, I was winning lots of ribbons, or I was like doing these demos or performances, all sorts of stuff. But I started to know that my horses didn't really like it, that they weren't really that happy. And after a while, it didn't mean anything to me, just the fact of doing it. It's like if they couldn't do it with a smile on their face, if they weren't happy, if they didn't want to participate, then I didn't want to do it anymore. And that's also one of the things that really set me on this path for finding another way that was less pressuring, that was more, in a much better deal for the horse. So, and it's like
reciprocity,
it's possible. Absolutely.
To
Absolutely.
add value to their life and give back and have respect for the fact that they're so generous.
Absolutely.
With everything they give. It's just feels respectful to be loving back and care for them and wish them longevity in their movement and value in their experience of life. Yes.
Yeah, totally. I think most people don't appreciate just how much horses give. They just expect that that's what horses should do, and that's what horses are put here on earth to do for people. But they're amazing what horses do. It amazes me all the time how much they give and what they put up with. But how much better the experience would be for people. The pleasure and joy that they would get out of it when they can do it in a way that feels good to the horse. It's like 1,000 times better feeling.
Yeah, and it also makes you really recognize the times when it's not like that. Like you don't, once upon a time, you would have kind of pushed through those times and just kind of gone, and still do it at times where I continue to push and then go, that was horrible. That didn't feel very nice. Jelly actually didn't like that. But the moments where you yeah, like you feel the horse is like going around with a little smile on its face. Like sometimes, I'll be doing some groundwork with Jelly and his little ears are just pricked and his little mouth is so soft and he's so responsive and like eager. Like I don't have to encourage or push or pull. And then afterwards he kind of stands up with like more pride. He always ends those sessions better than the way that he started. Like it gives me so much more than I ever got from riding, even though I thought that riding was, and you can obviously get it in riding as well, but like I thought that riding was my be all and end all of owning horses for a long part of my life. And then, but actually finding this different level of awareness of the horse, it's just, I get so much more out of the interactions and like seeing them enjoy the movement. And I'm also much more aware of when it's not, such a positive experience for the horse. And like you said, then I start questioning, well, how can I change that? What did I do? Is it something in their physical body that they're struggling with? Is it, something that the way I asked them to do it, or did I not set them up well or something like that? And it's really has shifted my relationship and awareness of horses like that I treat and my own.
Yeah, that's cool.
We have a massive list of takeaways from this podcast.
Yes, we do.
So many different things came up.
Do you want to start going through some of your takeaways?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first questions we talked about, understanding that emotional connection to posture, which I think has been definitely a theme traveling throughout, even what we were just saying then, the emotional feeling that horses have and feeling good and how important it is, but that safety and relaxation are two of the biggest things you said that you valued, and the way that the horse feels. So, thinking about how the horse feels in the moment as you do it and how you could shape what you're doing, how you're asking, how quickly you're progressing, etc., to better serve them and be loving in the way that you're training, I think was a big one. And those two exercises you told us about are fantastic. One being the meditation outside your horse's pen to connect with them, and also and breathing with them, and then going for a walk with them like your friends. To walk with them and gently. We also went over walking, so the walking with connection, and I really love what you said about whatever we allow, we reinforce, and whatever we allow, we get more of. And
whatever we reinforce, we get more of.
We get more of. And just if you can reinforce that there's a positive feeling in their body, or you can reinforce that there's connection on offer there, they're deeply motivated to seek it out if it's available to them. And you can show that through the way that you're connecting with them, whether it's at liberty or with a lead rope. That's an awesome takeaway. And also doing in your body what we would like your horse to do. So being clear on what you're looking for, be aware of the tension in your body, and think about being very clear. What am I looking for? What am I hoping to achieve in your body? And what do I need to do in my own to help you get there?
Absolutely. A little quote, be the change you want to see in your horse.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think also just observing, like finding pictures that you can utilize to create the pictures in your mind, because, I know for me for a long time, I didn't really know what I was looking for. Like I knew I was looking for something different, and I would look at horses and go, oh, that's not optimal biomechanics to me. But I had to really seek out examples of what did look like good biomechanics. So I think it's important to seek out those pictures and really ask the question when you see an image, like, And it comes back to the next takeaway point about, looking for that soft and smooth rhythm and flow. Like when you look at a picture of a horse, is that what you see? Does it look soft and smooth? Does it look like there's rhythm and flow in that moment? Does it look like there's relaxation, but there's that energy and responsiveness and softness? So really trying to seek out those images so that you can develop that in your mind's eye, so then you can help your horse. Because I know for me, that took me a while to understand what picture I was actually looking for in different moments.
Yep.
Different gaits, different exercises, because I hadn't actually seen it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because it's a bit rare.
it is. And
really optimal biomechanics. I mean, the thing is, we can chase perfection and look for perfection. Perfection doesn't really exist, which doesn't mean we shouldn't keep aiming towards it. But, no human is perfect, and we're all just working around our own issues. The same with horse. I mean, you're never going to find, I don't think, the perfect horse with no soundness issues. So it's always just aiming for that and just working towards, what we can achieve there. But yeah, it's just think a lot of the way a lot of horses are ridden and trained is not optimal biomechanics. So it is hard to see that perfect picture.
Yeah, and if you just keep asking the question, does it look soft and smooth in rhythm and flow? Like at least that gets you thinking about the image rather than just going, oh, that's a fancy.
Yeah, and look at the
Getting
horses.
captivated by the fanciness, because
Exactly.
I think that's also what did Sharon used to call it? Something. Oh, she used to call it like, I don't know. It wasn't this, but like fancy horse blindness, like you.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're trying to say. Yep, there's
You
still
see
Piaffe
the
and Spanish walk
fancy,
and
like
Bavard's.
the
So
movement or the fancy movement. You're like, wow, but then when you take a step back, and then you actually look at the whole picture and you kind of, just ask some questions. You're like, actually, it could be a bit softer there, and and I think I'd like to kind of finish that off with like the point about the horse enjoying the movement, and leaning into the experience, like enjoying the experience. And I think that's a question that we need to ask ourselves, every single day. Like, is our horse enjoying this interaction? What can we kind of see that they're showing this? And for each horse, it might be a little bit different. But just asking that question, how can we kind of make this experience better for our horse? Where can we improve? How can we help them? Because they are just so generous in what they are willing to give to us. So thank you for joining us today, Mel. And thank you for everyone listening. So thanks for joining myself, Dr. Raquel Butler, Sophie Vandenberg, and Mel Fleming in today's podcast. Enjoy your horse time. Please keep an eye out for our next equine functional posture course, and subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating if you enjoyed the podcast. And also don't miss our weekly episodes. Find our links to our socials, and we'll put links to Mel's socials in the comments as well.
See you in the next exciting episode.
Cool. Thank you.